Welcome, Life Sciences, to another exciting life science lesson. All right, what do we have planned for the lesson today? Well, today's lesson is a revision, lesson. And what we're just going to quickly recap is all the most important concepts that you needed to know about the human transport system. Right, so yes, we're looking at the whole, how do we get transport, how do we get things around our body, and we looked at a whole lot of things, and we're just going to go and recap over each of those sections. We're going to look at a couple of exam type questions. What kind of questions can be asked on this, right, on these kind of sections, and get you all prepared for when you have to write your exams or you have to write a test. Okay, so where are we going? If you have a look behind me, what are the concepts that we need to look at? So in this lesson, all right, we're going to look at a few things. Number one, we're going to look at the heart, right? The heart is the beating, pumping organ behind how our transport section looks. So we're going to look at the whole structure, the function of the heart. We're going to look at how the heart works, and that's quite important, right? The heart has what we call a cardiac cycle, and how does the heart relax and contract and get the blood right throughout our bodies? Which then brings us to the next concept, that the heart, the blood needs to transport through blood vessels. Now, even though I keep using the word blood in this section, I'm not going to go over blood, because the blood we would have done in the mammalian tissue. Right, when we looked at mammalian tissue, we looked at the whole structure of what the blood is, blood plasma, and the different kinds of cells. So we're concentrating more on how it's going to function. And then we're going to look at, what happens is the new concept is the lymphatic system. So we know that the heart transports blood, but a new concept for you might have been the lymphatic system, a system, where our fats are transported, we have antibodies, we have this thing called tissue fluid, and how we transport this tissue fluid throughout the body. So that would be a new concept that we'd look like. Probably didn't think that we had these two different systems, but we do. Now, as I said to you each time, there's lots of terms that we need to know. So when we speak life science, very often we have to speak, terminology. We need to make sure that we know exactly how to use the terms and what the terms mean. Otherwise, it's just going to be absolute other different language for us. So go over the terms. Do you know what each of these are? If you're unsure, look in your textbook, look at the revision notes, even use Google if you need to, but make sure you understand the concept of what we are looking at. As I said to you over here, the things that we're going to look at are the following. We're going to pay particular attention to the heart. We're going to look at the structure of the heart, how the heart beats. We need to look at the blood vessels, words like oxygenated, deoxygenated. What are the blood vessels? An artery, vein, capillary. How are they the same? We're not going to go over blood, as I said to you. Go back if you can't remember. You need to have a bit of a flashback, and that is why we did the whole section of mammalian tissue. You might have done that already. So that's where blood would have come into there, and here you would have just had a little bit of a recap. The lymphatic system is a new system that you are going to look at, and we're going to see how the lymphatic system ties up with the human blood system. Okay, what do we need to know about the heart? First of all, where is it? Very often it's the size of our fist, It's located here in a term called the mediastinum. What is mediastinum? Media means next to, sternum means your sternum. So here's your sternum, it's your breastbone, and your heart is going to slightly be to the side. It's like a space there. Your lungs are full. This is your thoracic cavity. And what's fitting in here? Your heart's going to be in here, and your lungs are going to be in here. A nice little tight squeeze, but we want them to be close to each other because they need each other. It's this whole oxygen, carbon dioxide, getting it around the body thing. You will also see, that it's a really important organ, and right, when we looked at the skeleton as well, when we look at the skeletal system, you will know that the ribs and the rib cage and the sternum, all right, are the bones there that are going to protect the heart. Right, so first of all, what is the heart? Now, two diagrams that you need to become very familiar with, and these are the external structure of the heart. Now, when we look at the heart, there's a few things we're going to notice. Number one, it's this muscle, right? And what do we mean by muscle? Let's go back to mammalian tissue, right? And we looked at the whole thing about cardiac muscle, right? And what do we know about muscle? It can contract and relax. What do we also notice about this muscle thing? That we have got these tubes that are going to bring blood into this pump, and the heart, this pump, the heart, is going to take blood out. Right, so that's the whole concept when we look at the external. We also tend to forget the heart itself is a living tissue, and the heart itself needs to get its own blood supply. And as I said to you here, very often what we mean coronary, right? If you have a coronary attack or heart attack, that means the heart. So when we look at the basic external structure, that is what we are looking at. You guys need to be able, all right, to be able to label these. Then the next diagram you must be able to label is the internal structure of the heart. Now, on the outside, what did we look at? We saw it was this muscle, right? We saw that it had tubes. But the next thing, when we look on the inside, we need to understand that the heart, all right, is divided into a left-hand side. All right, let me go back again because now I'm getting all my, all right, there we go. Let's go. Okay, we've got to remember that it's a mirror image. So let's go back again. A right-hand side and a left-hand side. Remember, it's a mirror image, so don't do what I just did. Okay, we've got to swap over. So here we've got a left and a right. And what we've got is a bottom and a top. We've got chambers at the top, and we've got chambers, let me start that again, at the bottom. So the top ones we call the atria, right, a singular atrium. They are the two chambers at the top, and at the bottom we're going to have two slightly larger structures called the ventricles, obviously each one being on the right and the left side. Also a concept that we need to look at, right, what we find, what separates the top and the bottom and the inside and the outside is this whole concept of valves. And what do valves do? Valves are a one-way door. Guys, very simple. Blood can only move in one direction. There is no reverse here, right? Any of you ever done your car license? If you reverse, you fail, right? If you need to go forward and you slip back, you're going to fail. Same thing here. No backflow. Not allowed to go back at all. Right, so what kind of questions can we ask on this? Guys, these are nice little questions, giving you the diagram of the heart, right? You should be able to label it. As I said to you, you need to know the external structure and the internal structure, and you need to be able to give the label. So let's see, this question says, the diagram below shows the structure of the human heart. So, and I'm hoping that as soon as you see it, you do know that it's the human heart. So let's see what kind of questions we can answer. All right, nice start. They want us to identify A, B, and G. All right, so let's just circle it so we know what it is. A, B, and G. Not the easiest of all ones, but let's have a look. A is nice, right? That's the aorta, right? It's the big vessel coming out there, and we know it's the aorta because it's going to take blood to all parts of our body. B, now we've got to look, all right, where is B coming from? B is coming from the right-hand side. And where is it going? B is going to the lungs. So we know that it's going to the lungs It's pulmonary. All right. Now, where is it going from? Away from the heart. So A for away. What blood vessels go away from the heart? It is going to be the pulmonary artery. All right. Always remember A for away. Now, what is G? If we have a look, these are the blood that's going away. We have a whole set of valves, right, that are going to stop the backflow. And these ones, right, that are found here and in the aorta, we call them the semilunar valve. Right, now if I remind you, I'm going to go quickly back again. Right, have a look here at our things. If we have a look, there's our aorta, there's our pulmonary artery, and they call it the pulmonary valve, or as I said, we can give it another one. We call them both together the semilunar. So again, you have to be able to label your internal structure. Right, what's the next question? Give the letters only. So guys, you can't give the names of the parts that prevent the backflow of blood. Right, don't stop reading there, into the atria. So these are the atria. All right, these are the atria. What is going to stop the blood from coming back here? And they only want the letters. So what's underneath? F. And what's underneath there? C. So you're only going to write F and C. Okay, guys, I'm afraid that looks like that's all we have time for. We're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. Welcome back, Life Sciences. I hope you had a good break. It's always good to just rest the brain a little bit, too much information. Just stretch those muscles and get the blood flowing. Let's get the heart working. Right, we're doing a revision series on the heart. And the first thing we looked at, on the human transport system, should I say, and the first thing that we looked at was the whole structure of the heart. Right, the next thing that we're going to look at is how does the heart beat? Right, what makes it beat, how does it contract, how does it relax? It's quite I won't say difficult, but it is a more, difficult part of the section when we're looking at the heart. Right, again, terminology here is going to be important. We're going to see a few terms, systole, diastole, pacemaker, AV node. There's a lot of terminology here that is going to be important. So as I said to you before, just make sure you understand what the important terms are. Go over the vocabulary. Maybe your textbook or revision notes have got something. And terminology is really important. Terminology is in our terminology section in your, when you do exam paper, you've got to do a word that means. It's nice marks, and even when they do the multiple choice and everything, it's good to understand what the term means. Okay, so when we're looking here, at the cardiac cycle, basically what we are looking at is how the blood is going to flow, through the heart. Now, what we're going to look at, there are two terms. They are very important here that you need to understand. The heart is a muscle, and a muscle can only do one of two things. It can contract or it can relax. And that's what it's going to do here. By the squeezing, the contraction and the relaxation, we are going to move the blood. Listen here, we're only looking at how blood moves through the heart, right? So the contraction, we use the word systole, right? Or a systole, that is how we contract. So whenever the muscle contracts, it's going to be known as a systole, right? And what can contract? The chambers of the heart. Either the atria or the atrium or the ventricles. They are going to contract. Exactly the same for relax. If the heart muscles relax, it is called diastole. A diastole. And again, what is going to relax? Both the atrium at the top, and the ventricles. Right, those contracting and relaxing will bring about movement. So if the heart rests, imagine we're resting, the blood will flow into the heart. So if I contract the top, the atria, what am I going to do? I'm going to squeeze the blood to the bottom, the ventricles. Then my ventricles are going to contract and they are going to squeeze the blood out. All right, so it's basically the whole thing is top, bottom, out. It's a rhythm. The heart beats in a rhythm, and that's exactly what you're going to do. Top, bottom, out. Top, bottom, out. And that is the whole cardiac cycle. Understanding the concept, most importantly, using the words systole and diastole. The second concept when it comes to the, if it comes to the heart, is very often, and I'm sure, I don't know if you've ever been to a doctor, or maybe you had it in class, that the doctor puts, they're called a stethoscope, all right? And it's an instrument that he puts in his ears, and he listens to your heartbeat. Now, our heart, if we listen to the stethoscope, we can actually hear a sound that gets made. And those are the heart sounds. And very often we term it lub-dub, all right? Lub-dub, lub-dub, lub-dub. And what it actually is the lub-dub sound, right, is the sound of the valves. So when the valves close, these atrioventricular valves close, they make a sound, right? We call it the lub sound. And when the blood exits, right, goes out of the blood vessels, these are our semilunar valves. They also close and they make that sound, right? So there's an alternating lub-dub, lub-dub. So close, up, top, bottom, right? And that is how the heart sounds. So sometimes if we have, all right, an irregular heartbeat, we might be able to hear that. The sound might be wrong, or it might not be in a rhythm. So that's one of the things that maybe they could tell if there is something wrong with your heart. All right, now the next concept of how does the heart beat? Now, if we look at any kind of muscle, when in order for it to work, must be stimulated by a nerve. Right. Now, the heart is a little bit what we call automatic. What do I mean by that? It's this automation. The heart actually kind of like, I won't say doesn't need the brain to beat, but the brain doesn't tell the heart to beat in a way. The brain's going to come in a little bit later and saying, okay, I will control how fast or how slow your brain goes. So basically what we have is we've got these little bundles of nerves, and this top one over here we actually call the pacemaker. Now I could imagine some of you might have parents or know somebody, right, who has to have an artificial one. And what happens is this pacemaker sends out a nerve at the top of the atria here. And what happens? The atria contract. That nerve impulse then travels to another little node, right? And it tickles it. It says, oh, come, I've done my work. You must now do yours. And what it does is, can you see here? It stimulates the ventricles, all right, to contract. So top, bottom, and then those ventricles, then the whole heart relaxes. It tickles the pacemaker again, because that's what the pacemaker is doing. It's setting the pace of the heart. And it tells, okay, top, bottom, let's relax. Top, bottom, relax. So we've got this constant, right, flow of impulses that come from the heart. I don't know if you ever watched some of these doctor series, and they've said that somebody is brain dead, all right, but they're still living. So what's happening is the brain no longer functions, and they need a machine to breathe, because the brain controls the breathing. But the heart is still beating, all right? As I said, because it's got its own little automation. It can beat without the brain telling it what to do. However, what the brain does do is tell it, all right, how fast or how slow it is going to beat. So what happens over here, this we're probably going to do the brain sometime, probably not in grade 10, maybe grade 11 or grade 12. And you're going to look at the structure of the brain. And you're going to see over here, there's what we call the brain stem. And it's called the medulla oblongata. And basically what happens is, this guy is going to pick up, all right, say for example, you've exercised a lot and you've got a lot of carbon dioxide in your blood and you've got maybe too little oxygen in your blood. Right, so what's it going to do? It's going to send a message to your heart and it's going to say to your heart, listen here, dude, too much carbon dioxide, we've got to get it out. Too much oxygen, we've got to get it in. So it sends a message to your heart, and your heart, have you ever seen when you exercise, what happens to your heart rate? It starts to beat faster, right? Why does it beat faster? Because what do I have to get to all my cells? Oxygen. Oxygen, pump, 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 and what do I need to get out? Carbon dioxide, right? So after I exercise, or maybe after I get a fright, or I'm in a scary situation and I need to do a lot of stuff that I need like a lot of energy for, I'm going to need oxygen, my heart rate is going to increase, right? When I measure it, go for a jog, right, what's going to happen? My heart is beating faster because I need to get more oxygen to my cells and I need to get more carbon dioxide away. Right, guys, what kind of questions can we ask over here? This is quite a difficult question, right? I've given you a diagram and it says to you the diagram below, there's 3 of them, form part of the cardiac cycle. So already what words must come to mind? Diastole and systole, right? The relaxation, all right, diastole, and the other one, our systole. All right, so it says, they study them carefully and answer the questions that follow. Right, the first question, and it's quite a tricky one, it says, name the stages A, B, and C respectively. Now I want you to have a look what's happening here. In the first stage, the blood is moving from the atria to the ventricles, which means that for that to happen, what must contract? The atrial, all right, sorry, they're contracting, must be systole. Right, the blood doesn't just rush through, it must contract, the ventricles open, and the valves open, and it goes through to the ventricles. The next one over here, look what's happening. The blood is going from the ventricles, and it wants to go out, okay? So we know that the ventricles are doing what? Contracting, and then it's going to be systole. Here we have a look, the blood is moving out, the heart is relaxing, all right, it's going to need to go back to do its work. So anytime we do work, all right, we're going to need to relax. So it's going to go under general diastole. Okay, guys, I'm afraid that is all that we have time for. Right, please, there are revision notes. There are more questions there. Go and look for past papers. There are past papers available on the internet, so ask your teacher. Practice, practice, practice these questions. All right, I'm just going to go through one more question, and then I just want you to see what it's going to look at. So, guys, for here, the next question, describe what happens in the heart during phase B. As I said to you, unfortunately, we've run out of time, right? But you're going to explain exactly what the muscles do, right? The ventricles, what do? They're going to contract. Okay, you're going to tell me about what the valves do, right? They are going to close. Which ones? The atrioventricular. Right, and what else are you going to tell me over here? You're going to tell me, right, that the blood is going to move upwards. Welcome back, Life Sciences, from that little break that we had. As I keep saying, it's always important just to get the blood flowing, get the heartbeat going, clear all the mind, get the oxygen going. Remember, we're looking at revision of the human transport system. And so far, we've looked at the structure of the heart. We have looked at how the heart beats, all right, and what controls the heartbeat. And the next thing we're going to look at is going to look at the blood vessels. Right, remember when it comes to all of this, so the terminology is so important, right? A whole lot of new terms, new words. They should be doing revision, right? They shouldn't be new to you, but again, sometimes they're really long words, right? And we do get confused and we get a little bit, all right? We're not quite sure what we're looking at, so make sure again that your terminology is spot on. This looks like a very complicated diagram, but I just want to tell you it's really important because the question that I've chosen is an essay question. And believe it or not, this essay question revolves around this whole thing, how blood circulates. Okay, so let's look at the first thing we need to understand. We've looked at the whole concept of the heart is going to pump the blood throughout the body. What on earth is this really complicated diagram means? This diagram means the following. Number one, okay, blood must come into the heart, right? There we have. So blood must come into the heart. And when I teach this, you must remember that blood must come in. It goes into the top. From the top, it goes to the bottom of the heart, and from the bottom of the heart, it goes out. That's all that it can do. It must do those things. So when we look at the blood vessels and circulation, you need to understand, right, that anytime anything that comes into the heart, we are going to call it, right, a vein. So it's not about what it talks, right? What about it carries? Any kind of blood vessel, if it comes in to the heart, it's going to be a vein. Do you see here? If it comes in, it's going to be a vein. If it comes in, it's going to be a vein. If it goes away from the heart, A for away, right? We are always going to say that it is an artery. Now, I'm sure that you've realized a lot of the time that when we look at the heart, we use the colors red and blue. Why do we use that? We use blue to indicate blood that is what we call deoxygenated. What does it mean? Deoxygenated blood, that it is has quite a lot of carbon dioxide. Right, so blood coming into the right-hand side of the body is filled with carbon dioxide, and we want to get it to the lungs. You will notice on the left-hand side, we often use red. And what does red tell us? Red tells us that it's oxygenated blood. What do we mean by oxygenated? We mean that the blood is rich in oxygen. So where has it come from? The lungs. So when we look at the blood vessels and the circulation, right, what are we looking at? How does the blood move from the heart? So where does it come in? What is the top part? Top part are the atria. Right, what is the bottom part? The ventricles. Right, and when I say out, I have two options. Where is the out going to? It's either going to go out to my body, or it's going to go to my lungs, okay? When it comes in, where does it come from? It's either come from my body, all right, or it has come from my lungs. A little bit confusing, but we will, all right, sort it out, make it a bit easier. Okay, so what do we have? Humans, or mammals, have what we call a double circulatory system. What does that mean? It means quite simply, look here, blood must come to our heart first. Then it must go to the lungs. And after the lungs, where must it come? Back to the heart. So basically, it does a double circuit where the heart, the blood comes to the heart twice. Once, all right, from the body, then it goes to the lungs, and those lungs is known as the pulmonary circuit. And then this nice, fresh, oxygenated blood goes back to the heart. The heart pumps it, and it takes it to the rest of the body. The rest of the body is called the systemic circuit. And I'm going to write over there, that is the body. It is this diagram over here. Okay, so the heart has its own circuit. It goes to the pulmonary, which is the lungs, and back again. That is my double circulation. Once the blood comes to my heart, it's filled with oxygen. Where must that blood go? It has two options. It must go to my head, all right? So my heart must pump all the blood to my head and to my arms, my upper body. Then where must the blood go? It must take all of this blood to these really important internal organs, my abdomen, my stomach, my liver, my kidneys, all right, my spleen, all of those. Each of them must receive, right, the blood coming in from my heart. And in turn, all of those are going to take blood back to the heart. Where else does my blood then need to go? Down to the very, very tip of my toe. And then it's got to come back up again. So as you can see, the systemic is all the different parts of my body that are going to need the blood. Okay guys, the next concept that we need to look at are the blood vessels. And the blood vessels, when we looked at the heart in the beginning, we might have looked at this concept called a closed circulatory system. We do. Mammals have a closed circulatory system. And what does that mean? It means the blood must stay in blood vessels. Now, if you have a look over here, what you must be able to do, right? An artery takes blood away from the heart. A vein brings blood to the heart. All right, now these two meet. Now these are really big blood vessels, the artery and the vein, right? They're really big, and our cells are really, really small. So what we need to have are these tiny little blood vessels in the middle that can facilitate all this movement. And those are going to be the capillaries. Now guys, when we look at the artery and the vein, they are slightly different in structure because they do things slightly more. Have a look, an artery's got a lot of muscle because it's got a pump, and the veins, they've got things back to the heart, so they've got valves to stop the blood flow. So you need to be able to, all right, tell the difference between an artery and a vein and a capillary and why. All right, now what I've done is we're not going to have enough time to do all of the questions, but I'm afraid going through past papers, it seems that the circulation of blood is a really nice essay question. All right, so let's have a look here. Let's just do the plan of the essay, even though we might not have time to do the whole essay. It says, give a detailed description of the journey of a red blood cell as it travels from the right atrium. I like to draw this. Right, okay, right atrium, right ventricle, right A, right V, left A, left V, right? So the journey starts here. There's my little red blood cell. And how it goes, right, travels from the right atrium, here's our start, of the heart, round the body and back to the left atrium. So it needs to, all right, come back over here. So basically what you have to tell me is this, the right atrium to the right ventricle. And you remember you must tell me, all right, each time where it goes. So have like, maybe you can plan, right? It goes through the valves. Then where does it go? It goes through to the pulmonary artery. There we go. don't have, and where's it going to? It's going to the lungs, where it picks up oxygen, right? And where does it come back with? A pulmonary vein. So for the first part of the question, you have to look at the whole transport. So it's not around the whole body, it's right, look here, in, top, bottom, out, to the lungs, and back again. What would the second part be? So this would be your first paragraph. That would be paragraph number 1, and that you would explain the whole of that. The second paragraph would be, tell me the difference between the arteries and veins. Don't draw a table, right? But what you can do, you can tell me arteries have a thick muscle, and you can say their veins have a thinner muscle. So there we go. Do you see I've taken 1 point and I've got 2 there. And I'll do that for all of the different parts of that. So as I say to you, essay, 17 marks, all right? Usually 14 points that you have to come up with, and 3 points the teacher's going to give you for how well did you write your essay, did you have your concepts, etc. Okay, I'm afraid that's a little bit running out of time. We're going to have a little break and then we'll be right back. Welcome back, Life Sciences, from your break. As I said before, get the oxygen going, get the muscles going. Right, we are looking at the revision. Right, we're looking at the human transport, and we're just going over, recapping, right, the most important concepts that we need to look at. So far, we have looked at the heart, the whole structure of the heart. Then we looked at how the heart worked, the cardiac cycle, the pacemaker, and all of that. And then we looked at how the blood travels through the heart, right, in these arteries, veins, and capillaries. We also looked at with a deoxygenated blood versus oxygenated blood, that the heart has a double circulatory system, that it comes to the heart, goes to the lungs, comes back to the heart again, right? So we got to bring it in, get it to the lungs, get it all nice and fresh, and back out. Now the next part we're looking at is a different part to the cardiovascular system. So all of those were connected to the heart, but there is another transport system called the lymphatic system that is also going to play a role in how we transport things around the body. Okay, again, there are words here, terminology. The lymphatic system itself is a new term that you need to be able to define. What does it do? And here we're also having a look at a few of the disorders. What could happen if we don't look after the heart, if things can go wrong. But we're going to start off with the lymphatic system. Okay, guys, when it comes to the lymphatic system, basically what you need to understand is the following. And the most important thing you need to realize is that, remember, arteries are really big and they are wide. And they are going to, imagine if I draw a line here, it's like being stuck on the highway. And the highway comes down to just one lane. And what happens there, you're going to form a lot of pressure around that area. And we kind of want that pressure in, because what happens is, as we get to these small little pressure areas, these are the areas where the cells are found. And what happens is, what we do is the blood plasma, the water part, seeps out of these, all right, of the arteries, especially the capillaries. And what it does is, I'm just going to use a different color just to show it. What it does is it bathes, right? It bathes the tissues in what we call tissue fluid or interstitial fluid. And that is a really important concept, because what happens is, you're not biltong. We're not these dry biltong flakes. Our body needs to be moist. And this water over here, it's the blood plasma, right, now bathes, right, is going to bathe the cells. Now, what happens is the blood comes in, all right? It goes in the capillaries, and then it carries on again. But what happens is this fluid is constantly coming out. It's constantly under pressure. Now, what happens if we don't return this pressure back to our bodies? I'm going to show you the next slide. This is what's going to happen. Look at this poor lady over here. This is what a normal leg should look at. What's happening here is all the lymph fluid is going into the tissue fluid, and what is not happening? This drainage. It means that this system, her lymphatic system, is not working. So what do we have here is when we push this water into the tissue fluid, we need to have a system that takes that excess fluid and drains the tissues. Because remember, the blood is constantly flowing. It doesn't stop. So what's going to happen is this lymphatic system, this lymph, is going to transport this excess fluid, all right? And it's going to return it to the blood, and the volume is going to keep the same. Now, also what happens is, what we also need the lymphatic system is, as you can see, it doesn't have the high, all right, water content of blood plasma. And this is one of the ways, if you did biochemistry, that we can transport fats. Guys, if we transport fats into our blood system, we are going to clot our arteries by the time that we are 2. So what do we have? We have a system here, all right, an alternative system that can transport fats. And your lymph system, right, it has valves. If we have a look, if I show you the next diagram, it's all these green things over here, right? So it's not like the blood where it's closed. It just starts and it drains, right? So what it's doing, it's draining the excess fluid. It's transporting fats. You can feel it. It's your glands. Sometimes when you're sick, those glands are swollen. Why? Because they also make white blood cells that help you, all right, with it. But ultimately what they do, they just take that fluid, travel different transport way in which you go, and then they're going to return to the heart there. So they play, right, quite an important role, as I said, in certain things that are happening in the body. It's the lymphatic system. Right? As I said, blind ending things, they're not closed, they don't form this whole closed system like they do. So what generally happens is, because they don't have the muscles that your veins and your arteries do, you actually are a bit of you guys make it work. So very often the lymphatic system, you'll find it's near a muscle. So if I do work, what does my muscle do? My muscle works, and when my muscle works, it gets the lymph fluid going up the body. So I kind of like our muscle system and our blood system try to help it to move, because it doesn't have that same muscle system as our heart, our cardiovascular, our blood vessels, especially our veins and our arteries have. All right, guys, now we also need to look at a few things that we need to look at is what happens when we don't look after our heart. Okay, what happens when we have certain kind of diseases? And it's not only about looking after our heart. Sometimes when it comes to certain things like high blood pressure and high cholesterol, sometimes we are genetically inclined. What does that mean? Doesn't matter how healthy a lifestyle we have, right? Sometimes our heart, we can have problems with our heart. Right, so one of the things we have to look for, right, make sure, is high blood pressure. And that is when when we talk about high blood pressure, that's sometimes we have too much water, so I say, in our arteries, and it forces this pressure, and that pressure, right, adds pressure onto the heart. And what can the heart do? Right, the heart, if it has the high pressure, the heart can stop. We can have a heart attack, or the heart itself can stop, right? Or what could happen, we have a stroke. What is a stroke? Right, is where we either bleed in the brain, or we have a clot, either one of those two. And what's happening, the brain tissue is not going to get blood, and that could happen. Vision loss. Guys, very often the pressure in our eyes, all right, presses against our eyes, and we can actually see blind. So that's why I've got this lady over here. She has got a machine, right, that is going to measure her blood pressure. And as I said, this is the blood pressure that we're looking at. This is our systole, all right, over our diastole. How hard does our hard work, systole, and what happens when we are at rest? This is a really long word. It's called atherosclerosis. And what happens here, can you see these are my arteries? And you see what I'm doing when I eat foods that are very high in fat, I start to block. What does the fat do? It blocks the arteries, all right? That leads to high blood pressure. But where is it going to block? It usually blocks the arteries in the heart, right? And what happens is it blocks, it stops the blood, or it causes it to burst, and then we have a heart attack, right? And that's where we need to have all the bypasses and the stents, etc. Okay, this is quite a tricky question that I've given to you, but it's related to blood pressure. As I said to you, it's quite a tricky one, so let's see if we can work, even if we just work through the first question, let's see what it says here. It says the diagram below shows aortic pressure during the cardiac cycle. A normal blood pressure is said to be 120/80. So have a look, see around about here. All right, that would be a normal blood pressure. So what it is basically, as we said, it's your systolic when your heart contracts, and then what is your heart at rest. The systolic pressure is the highest pressure that the blood in the aorta reaches. So that's going to be over here. While the diastolic pressure is the lowest pressure that the blood in the aorta reaches. So we're going to look at that one. That's going to be a normal one, but have a look here, we're going to have a high one. So while the diastolic pressure is the lowest in the blood that it drops to. Okay, so the question is, using the information in the diagram, you now have to work out this person's blood pressure. Right, so we have a look over here. This is the normal one. That's what it was. But look what happens to this guy. So he now might do something or whatever. And what does his blood pressure do? I'll say he. It could be a she. I'm being a little bit sexist here. So I'm going to take my ruler. I don't have a ruler, but I'm going to judge. And this is the highest one. And looks like I get to 160. All right. So it looks like I get to 160. So now what happens to his heart? It goes down, all right? And then it goes up again, but that's going to go another stretch. So here we go. We're going to go up there. I'm going to go. You can choose either here or here, but they're pretty much the same reason because that's where it's low. Oh, my soul. And we're going to get to 120. So this guy's blood is 160/120. Now, if I was to ask you the next question, do you think it is normal, low, or high? If the normal is 120/80, and this guy, all right, is 160/120, he definitely has high blood pressure. Okay, and I'm afraid it looks like that's all we have time for. Our time is running out. Guys, go over the revision notes, go over past papers, all right? Go and see if you can practice these kind of questions. There's lots available to you. And that is all we have time for. See you next time. Cheerio, bye.